Hi, hello. So this video will be around debugging and using Grunt to debug your code inside the design time. So I made a couple of videos already using Grunt to debug your application when it's running in runtime. So for example, here standard library is running in runtime, so when your application is executed. But sometimes you are more interested in, let's say, the design time. So in the previous video I created a custom JavaScript action, download file, and this one is used inside, is created inside a sample library. So sometimes you just want to debug your code because it can be a bit complex, it can be a bit tricky, especially if it's a custom JavaScript action, so you want to be sure that whatever you're doing here is correct. So before, when I did the first video, when you were using Grunt, you could only debug the runtime. If you wanted to debug the runtime, the design time, it was much more difficult. You had to use Grunt and then use resource override to say, well, if I have this URL, I want to redirect to this one. So basically the idea was to say, well, whatever is coming from my server for this file, I want to replace it by the Grunt version. So now it's actually a bit different. So we changed a couple of things. So now if you, let's say I want to debug this one. So I want to see what happens when I click on attachment field and maybe do some modification. So let's see how I can do that. So I go to, once I grant my application, I'm on localhost. So I go to Innovation Studio. So it's going to be a bit slower. So I open sample library. I'm opening my view. And here I should have my action. Okay, so everything works great. So now let's say that it's actually not working and I want to modify something in my code. So for example, let's say I want to add something in the name. So I want to add something stupid. So when I'm going to save, you can see that Grunt is going to trigger to get the new version of the file. And well, of course I don't see the modification here, I have to reload the page. But after I reload the page, I should see the new version of my code. So let's see. Picture hello. So as you can see, so it's much easier than before. And if you want to debug your code which executes on a design time, it's very useful. For example, when you create custom editors or code, for example, that executes on the canvas, like I did for the feedback star. Oh, not this one, but star rating click. Here you can see that depending on the number of stars, it's going to have an impact here. So if you want to debug this code now, it's much easier than before. So it's a good thing to know.